Hi, my name is Luciana Brown, your Multicultural Outreach Coordinator for POPIN, which stands for Parents of the Panhandle Information Network. And I am so glad that you decided to tune in today. Yesterday, we talked about RTI and MTSS. And so today, we're going to have a discussion on the 10 basic steps to special education. And so before I get started, for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, the name of the organization that I work for is called Family Network on Disabilities. A little bit of history: we are a 501(c) program, and we are very, very unique. Everyone that works for the company the organization actually either has a child with a disability or has a family member with a disability, or they may have a disability themselves. So we're very compassionate about what we do. We're also very knowledgeable about the information that we give you. And so we are Parent Training Information Center. And so we cover the whole state of Florida. And we actually just provide support, resources, and information so you can get the best information so your child can have free and appropriate education and have the supports that they need. And so another thing that we do not do is we're not doctors, we're not lawyers, and we do not do any diagnosis. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so some people may wonder, how do I get to the process of special education? What do I have to do? What are the steps that I have to go through? And so there are 10 basic steps that we actually have to go through. And so before a student can begin receiving special education services, he or she must be referred to have an evaluation. And so you can do that as a parent, a teacher can do it. There are so many primary ways, but there are two primary ways in which children are identified as possibly needing special education related services. The system we know is Child Find, which operates in each state and by a referral of a parent or school personnel. So each state has a Child Find, and it's required by IDEA to identify and locate and evaluate all children with disabilities in the state who need special education services. So you may find Child Find is linked up with FIDLERS, which is Florida Diagnosis Learning Resource Center. And so you find different activities they may have, like next month at Children's Medical Service in Tallahassee, Florida. They're having a free screening for children 0 to 5. You may have a Help Me Grow person out doing screenings. I heard one was going on in Taylor County sometime this month. When it's possible, by Child Find, when a child's identified having a disability and needs special education, parents may be asked for permission to evaluate the child. So parents can also call the Child Find office and ask that their child be evaluated. So for an example, if your child just starting school and maybe transitioned from a private school to a public school, or even another state. So most often the request comes from a parent as a referral or from a school. And so the request should be definitely put in writing. And I tell a lot of the parents that I work with, put it in writing, make your copy, or either send it by email, which is very good way of keeping track of your records. So the district will either evaluate your child and provide you with a written notice of legal action of denying the request. So a parent's signed parent consent is needed before a child can be evaluated. So under the federal IDEA regulations, evaluations need to be completed within 60 days after the parent gives consent. This is if this is their first time being evaluated. If not, then that 60 days does not apply. So if a state's IDE regulations give a different timeline for completion of evaluation, the state timeline is applied. So in Florida, there's an initial evaluation needs to be completed in 60 days of that consent and must be sought within 30 days of your documented request unless the parent and the school otherwise agree in writing. So to clarify, it is very important that a formal evaluation cannot begin until the school district has provided you with a separate form to sign. This signed parent consent form is the only documentation that will start the process of assessing your child unless the school agrees to accept your email request as a parent consent, and that's not typical. So ask for a meeting where you can formally sign the consent form as well as ask questions. So step 2 is the evaluation progress. And so the different areas that will be evaluated are several. So each child grows and learns at a unique pace. Some kids are late bloomers. Some kids even learn early. Most kids are learn between. As long as the child acquires new skills within the window of time considered normal for acquiring that skill, the child is on track developmentally. But if the development of the child outside normal age is a good idea to ask about evaluation as well. So they evaluate assesses the child in several areas to suspect the disability. So they look at the language, nonverbal processing, the thinking, and visual and spatialia. They also look at attention and self-regulation, memory, fine motor, gross motor skills, social and emotional functioning, and development are also assessed. So step 3 would be eligibility determined. So the questions you may ask: does your child have a disability? Does your child disability impact their education? Is the child in need of special education as defined by the instructions given? So a group of qualified professionals and the parents look at the evaluation results together and will decide if the child has a disability as defined by IDEA. And there are 14 categories. And if you tuned into the introduction, I actually went over those categories. I gave that introduction on Monday. So if you want to go back, it's a short 15-minute introduction on IDEA. It gives you those categories that are defined by IDEA. So examples of adverse impacts can include a discretionary between performance and ability, limited progress, or deficiency in conduct areas. So evidence of emotional or behavior disturbances also are looked at, and problems with fine motor and gross motor skills. So step 4, child is found eligible. So in interpreting evaluation data, each public agency is to draw up information from a variety of resources, including aptitude, achievement tests. I know when my family member was evaluated, they sent home something asking me questions from like when they first walked, when they first talked, do they feed themselves? I mean, even about their temperament. So they sent that home. Parent input, teacher recommendations, physical conditions, your cultural background, even behavior will be asked questions about. But there are not definite rules for determining who is eligible for specific education. There's a very important concept to understand. It means that under the law, the IEP, which is called the Individuals Education Plan, team will have the flexibility of determining if the child qualifies for services. So if a parent disagrees with the district's evaluation based upon the district's failure to assess the child in a specific area of need, the parent has the right to an independent education evaluation. And this is at the public's expense. The parent does not have to pay for this. And so remember that parents have the right to an IEE, which is an independent education evaluation, if they do not agree with the evaluation performed by the school. So an IEE is conducted by a private examiner who is not employed by the public school. At that point, the district is required to either request a due process hearing to show that the evaluation is appropriate or provide the requested IEE at its expense. And so after that is done, we're at step 5. And so an IEP meeting is then scheduled. So if the child is found to be with a disability as defined by IDEA, he or she is eligible for special education and related services. So within 30 calendar days after the determination, the team of professionals, parents, everybody involved must meet, have a meeting. And so most states changed calling the IEP plan from plan to program. So the school schedules this, and the IEP You may have school staff, such as the teacher, maybe a general education teacher, maybe the special education teacher. They normally contact the participants and the parents and notify them early enough to make sure that they have adequate enough time to make the meeting. So schedule the meeting at a time that is placed as agreeable, most likely to be at the school. Make sure the parents know the purpose and the time of the meeting. Parents can also bring others to the meeting, but I also tell the parents to make sure that they let the school know who they're bringing. It could be your neighbor, it could be mom and dad, it could be grandma, it could be an aunt. So you can invite anyone you know that has special knowledge or expertise about your child. So step 6. If your child's diagnosed with a disability, the next step would be to design a program for him or her that will address their needs. And so the IEP need basically is a written statement, and it can be changed and revised at any time by the IEP team meeting. And so it consists of the parents and the students when appropriate. The IEP team gathers together to talk about the child's needs. The parents and the students are fully participating members of the team. And so, like I said before, you may have the special education teacher. If your child gets therapy, you may have speech therapy, occupational therapist, a social worker, psychologist, principal, guidance counselor, behaviorist, a friend, a colleague. It could be anyone that has expertise or can help with developing that IEP plan, for that child. So it is a common practice for IEP team members to begin drafts as a part of the IEP prior to, and I tell parents you can request a copy of that draft, and it's always good to request a copy because that way you can look it over, write down questions that you may have, and have them ready when you get to the meeting. But know that the IEP decision no IEP decision should be made without your participation. So if you feel that something is not right, you can always voice your opinion. And like I said, get the document early. So step 7 is related services. These are supportive services and activities necessary for some of the students with disability to maximize their educational outcomes. And so your child will be assessed to see what services they need in that area. So the IEP team must consider the student's academic development and functional needs and when doing the IEP. So any related service or support that helps the student and benefits them and helping them achieve their plan should be put in the IEP. So special education related services are intended to be flexible to meet the student's need and make sure they get the services they need. So appropriate match is important for the child. Related services can assist in helping them to participate in general education, meet their annual educational goals, and also can be extracurricular activities and non-academic activities as well, such as after-school activities, different things that relate to services that they need to be successful. So step 8, in addition to formal meetings, you should be also in constant communication with your child, general education teacher, and special education teacher. You should be able to monitor your child's progress on academic goals. Within this, if you looked at the last workshop we just did yesterday, you will see that you should know in your IEP how often you will be contacted or regularly updated about your goals. The instruments and methods used to measure progress must also be documented, and how often results of data will be reported and how it will be communicated with by phone, email, documentation. Some schools send things home in the child's backpack. But also keep in mind that IEP is a legal document that must be implemented fluidly. That means they must follow that IEP, and you have the right to request evidence that they are following it. So step 9, IEP is reviewed. So the IEP, child's IEP is reviewed at least once a year, sometimes more often if there's a problem where one of the goals may be not attainable, not reachable. It may be that they may have reached their goal already. So it's necessary for the IEP to be revised. So parents, team members must also be invited to participate in these yearly revisions. So parents can make suggestions for changing. They can agree or disagree. They can also agree or disagree with the placement. Though it's not required by law, having the IEP team members, including parents, sign the IEP has several benefits. So even though it's not required by law, having your team together, including your parent, and making sure that everything is done correctly is very important. So a signed IEP document who's attending the meeting. If the IEP document is not signed, the school district must document member attendance in another way. So this is useful for monitoring and compliance purposes. So if you do not approve the program, make note of your exceptions on the IEP or in a note or a letter. If you believe the IEP needs to be modified, you should write a letter to request another meeting to revise it. And so step 10, which is our last step, a reevaluation. So sometimes a reevaluation may occur if you don't agree with the previous evaluation. It may not occur more than once a year unless the parent or public agency agree otherwise. And so it must occur at least once every 3 years unless the parent or the public agency agree that re-evaluation is unnecessary. If the parent or public agency agree with your child will undergo a new round of assessments to determine his or her continuing eligibility for special education services, and you will be presented with information at the next meeting. And so sometimes during this time, the children grow out of having certain needs and they have new needs. And so that's why it's the purpose of having the reevaluation. So I am thankful that you tune in again. If this is your first time, I thank you for tuning in as well. I have discussed with you the 10 basic steps in special education process. I hope that this information gives you a clear understanding about the steps, how you go about getting your child evaluated, the steps about pre-referral, the steps about eligibility, and steps about meetings, how often are they reevaluated. Not only that, how long the time frame that the school has to reevaluate them. And so even knowing that if it's not their first evaluation, that it's not required by law that they take 60 days. And so again, I want to thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time, my name is Luciana Brown. You can reach me at luciana@fndfl.org. And we are so delighted to help you. Please go to our Facebook page and like it, share it, because we have a lot of different information we post, a lot of resource fairs and information that we post, a lot of places that we attend. So if you need to come and speak to us in person, you know where we are. And so we cover the whole state of Florida. We have several programs. We have Poppin, which is who I work for, the program, which is in the northern region. We have PSN, which is in the central region, which is Parent Supporting Network. And we have PEN, which is Parent Educating Network. They are in the South Florida area. And we also have Family Star, which helps with parents that have children with significant health needs. We have our Advocates program, as well as our FND Trust. And so if you have any questions or you want to learn more about our organization, you can go to our website at www.fndusa.org, or you can also call our 1-800 number, 1-800-825-5736. And so again, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you have a great holiday, great weekend. I wish it was a holiday. It's getting ready to be spring break for me. So I hope you have a great time this weekend. Enjoy the weather wherever you are. And tune in again next week, next Thursday and Friday, I believe on the 21st and the 22nd. We'll have 2 more parts of IDEA. And so thank you for tuning in and have a great day.